Hello, everyone. That was a bit of a delay. This is Joe Bratu, and I have with me Glen Williams, a long friend and CEO.
A long friend, a
long time friend, because long friend would be.
That's a better description.
See, that's that's the immigrant in me, because I did learn ESL with a bunch of Koreans. Did you know that?
I did not know
Well,
that.
we'll talk a little bit, but I should introduce you. Who the heck is Glen Williams? Well, Glen Williams is the CEO of My Blockchain Life, a crypto mining company that's doing some incredible work. Yes, and we're going to delve into that because I'm so excited, because you're one of the few people that I know that has tons and tons and tons of insight in all sorts of really interesting categories, industries.
That can also be described as not being focused in life.
But let's get into that, because remember you and I had that one conversation, and the question was that you were this guy that had a diversity of interest, and often that was a frustration for you.
Yeah.
But I tend to see it now as a strength.
Yeah, I think something you always added to that too was diversity of strengths or interests, and a diversity of connections as well. So that certainly added to it.
Yeah, and I think the way I met you, interesting enough, was through your dad.
Yeah.
Because he was my mentor at church, I remember.
Many years ago.
Many years ago, Hugh Williams. And he connected you to I. And we were going to the same church, but for some reason we were living two different lives. You were, let's just say, if we were to go to a Senators game, I'd be, in the rafters, and you'd be in the box.
Actually, if we went to a Senators game, we'd be sitting alone right now. There's
nobody there.
Nothing going on, yeah.
But years ago, you were, you had a very fast-growing company and did a lot of work. Maybe tell us a little bit about that life.
Yeah, I guess back then, it started out. Oh boy, you can go so many ways now, right? There's just, and of course, with so many people that we both know and love, going back to then, I guess when you and I met, I was just getting into business on my own. Like, I've been doing things on my own, but really getting into a real business. And it was a sign business that I started out. And over the first couple of years, I was doing signs, door painting, lawn care maintenance, something else. I had a little ice cream stand. It was like I was doing all kinds of things. And a wonderful friend and brother of ours, Larry Bruin, gave me some great advice, which you just kind of referenced to a little while ago, which was you can't finish taking one step until you take the next, was the advice. And I kind of thought, oh yeah, I'm doing all these things. And I stopped doing them all except the sign business. And within 3 years, we grew into the second largest sign company in Ottawa.
Wow. Incredible.
Yeah, it was amazing. 25 employees, close to $4 million a year in sales. And just, and of course that opened the doors for all kinds of other things to happen, and ended up building that walkway at the Corral Center, doing all kinds of things there. Yeah.
So every time someone, well, now that the Senators are not playing, but that walkway there, that leads from the parking lot
up to the building, yes.
Up to the building.
Which actually, not that it looks like an eyesore now, but it's not being utilized for what it was designed for, selling advertising on the inside and outside, getting people out of the weather and walking them up to the building to go to a game or a concert or whatever it was. And that was a project we had taken on, and we had a great, I guess, deal with the Senators and the ownership of that time. And unfortunately for us, the day we finished building that walkway was literally the day that Rod Bryden filed for bankruptcy.
Wow.
And so the writing was on the wall. We lost that. The new ownership came along, made us an offer that we had to refuse, wrote us a check for $1 and asked us to leave. Basically, that's in a nutshell version.
And that's when I met you, interesting enough. So I met you on the, sadly enough, not on the uptake, on the decline. And because at that point you just basically lost everything.
Yeah, ended up going bankrupt for $2.8 million, lost everything. And unfortunately, even my late wife at the time and the mother of my 3 beautiful boys was diagnosed with cancer at the same time, and then ultimately a year and a half later passed away. So it was a very, very big decline, yes. And
I remember during that period of time, because you have these 3 beautiful little boys that that I adored, and I remember visiting all the time, seeing them, and also of course your wife. How did you? Because you and I spent a lot of time together in that period of time, And one of the things that I think I've always been impressed by you is your bounce back, your ability to bounce back from loss and continue to move forward.
I'm thinking about that as you're asking it, and I'm like, it's an innate thing. It's built in, because it's not something I do on purpose. It's just there. That doesn't mean somebody can't learn to focus on that and grow in it on purpose, but it's just always been in me to just go, no, I'm not settling. I'm not going to pass or just, move over to the sidelines and watch instead of participate. No, I'm going to keep going. And of course, if you'd told me at that time, way back then, that, you're going to lose all your businesses, your home, your vehicles, your everything. Oh, and then your wife's going to pass away with cancer and you're going to raise 3 little kids on your own. Nobody would say, oh yeah, I can probably handle that. If you'd told me ahead of time, I'd have probably ran away. But you get through it. And each day, I remember, Joe, having some unbelievably challenging days where I remember one time specifically, I dropped the kids off at school, came home, walked in the house. I went about halfway down the hallway and I just stopped. I was just kind of frozen. I wasn't crying, I was just kind of frozen. And then I realized that 2.5 hours had gone by and I was still standing there.
Wow.
But there's always this thing for me, a gift from God, an unbelievable little tiny thing that always said, tomorrow's a new day. So sometimes I just have to get through this one. The next day, tomorrow is a new day. And I'll face that. And oddly enough, every time I woke up the next day, I was like, yeah, life is good. I'm in a great place. We'll just keep moving forward. Whether that was a business thing or a life thing or a relationship thing, it was always, tomorrow's a new day.
That you make it sound, because I had the opportunity to be there and to watch you navigate through it. Mm-hmm. And there were times when, I had to stop myself from really being present, because by being present, you have to address the gravity of the loss. And so for me, especially as someone who's there to be a support and a help, it was more like, okay, let me be a little bit more detached so I can be more, a support to you. But you were living in it day in, day out. And so the reason I'm pushing on this is because I know lots of people right now are confronted with loss because of COVID. Some people have lost their businesses. Some have lost, people that they love. Just a lot of loss right now. And so what would be your advice, I guess, for those individuals that are going through stuff like this?
Wow, to nail it down to one piece of advice.
No, I know.
That's it's challenging, but reality is that you and other people like you were a big part in the navigation of that time. Whether you realize that or not. I mean, I'm sure you do. We've had so many in-depth conversations, whether they were in person or with a phone, different days. And you and I are also blessed to have the kind of relationship where we could talk every day and then we can talk a few weeks later or a couple of months later and everything's the same, exactly. Right? It doesn't change for us, which is a blessing in and of itself. And I think a lot of people have those kind of relationships, but they fail to recognize it. There are people around that don't change for you. They're there. Whether they're on the phone each day or they show up each day, it doesn't matter. They're still there in some way, shape, or form. And I think, for example, when Lizzie passed away, and things radically changed. Business, homes, everything's changed, right? One of the first things I did recognize was how many people weren't there, which was interesting. And I found out over time that a lot of people think when somebody's going through that level of grief or that level of loss is that they all think somebody else is there. They all think, well, he knows a lot of people, they have a lot of friends, somebody else is, making them a meal or stopping by to say hello or doing something. And the reality was that everybody kind of disappeared, except for a select handful of people, which you were, definitely included in. And I think everybody has that. Everybody's got some people that are just always there. And I think if you can find a way to recognize that and acknowledge it for yourself, knowing that there's somebody there, it gives you strength. You sit up and of course that's not to take away that God's always there, right? That's the ultimate. But just to know that there are some people that are always there. And if you just tell yourself that, it immediately gives you a little strength, a little backbone. And and again, in addition to that, tomorrow's another day. Tomorrow's a new day.
That's amazing. And I think that's what I love about you is you're very an optimistic person. Naturally, being an entrepreneur,
I like that word. My parents call me a dreamer.
A dreamer, yes.
Which is, they don't necessarily mean it in a bad way, but it sort of it drags along a small negative connotation to it. But I'm the eternal optimist. Everything's going to be okay.
But it's individuals like you that tend to be the ones that create the next big thing. We often read about these guys, whether it's Bezos or Steve Jobs or any of these guys that just keep pushing. We even talk about, what's his name, Abraham Lincoln. I think he didn't become the president of the United States until he was in the 70s. Tried many times. How do you keep moving forward in spite of people not fully understanding the thing that drives you?
Okay, that's another whole podcast.
Yes, I know. I'm asking big questions.
They are big questions. And again, I apologize if I don't have a good short answer, but reality is it's a challenge. It is a challenge. And of course, I guess if somebody like me or you looks to other people like that, you can find that encouragement. But when you have the people that are closest to you that are not supportive or not believing in what you're doing, and after you've had a failure and another, how many failures you've had, a lot of the people that are closest to you are kind of going like, okay, enough, get yourself a real job, do whatever it is. Yeah. And of course, I think for me personally, there are those that are close to me that would say now, like, okay, I'm doing something new again. It's going great right now. It's going fantastic. But, they'd be like, no, just get a job. Just do. I'm 58. I know I don't look it. You're supposed to say something about it.
You look 21.
Well, okay, don't lie. So I'm 58. And I think for myself, to go get a job now and to think that I can take care of myself for the rest of my life, like into retirement, doing something like that, oh my gosh, that scares the heck out of me. It's just like, no, that's not going to happen. I must do something for me. I must take charge. And I guess, big leaders in the leadership world, John Maxwell, Darren Hardy, people like that would teach you have to have a good why. And throughout life, your why is going to change. You have a different why when you're 20 and a different why when you're 30, and it continues. And at 58, part of somebody's why should be the fact that I don't want to work the rest of my life. I don't want to be 85 years old and wondering, how am I going to pay my bills, or how am I going to, so I guess I'm kind of the guy that's always looking for the home run. I'll do whatever it takes to, make things happen in the meantime, but I'm still looking for that home run, I think, which is what propels me into opportunity. A lot of people might be a little closed-minded to things. I remember years ago, 15-ish years ago, sitting in my driveway talking to my neighbor, and him saying, he's asking me what I do, and I'm kind of explaining it to him, and it's, entrepreneurish, and, I do things for myself, and him making a comment about, well, I work for the government. He has a government job. He goes, I'm never going to need to do that. I'm taken care of for life. And I just thought, what a shallow view. Like, oh my gosh, that's just, terrible. And I think, to think that and say it is one thing, to believe it a whole other. And then, of course, I bump into him years later, 11, 12 years later. He's not with the government anymore. Whatever division he was at or whatever he was doing got cut, and he's gone from there. And, starting over. So. And that's the big lie, isn't it? Often that we settle because of security. So often a false security, a false sense of security. Yeah, something that makes you think everything's going to be taken care of. And of course, that's that old school thinking, right? And I'm not, trying to pick on anybody individually or whatever, but that old school thinking is, well, Robert Kiyosaki teaches it, right? Get a good education, get a good job, work till retirement, draw your pension. That, of course, is the mindset of certainly our parents and the parents before them, that group, right? And I just can't see how things have changed so drastically. I forget who it was, somebody very famous, very wealthy, in the last year, talking about how jobs are going to change in the near future. And even saying, and not to bounce yet, but talking about blockchain technology and how that's going to affect things. For example, that person said in that article, if your kid's in school for law right now, pull them out, find another career. And the reasoning was that the amount of legal jobs, for example, real estate lawyers, people that do stuff with real estate, will or can become obsolete in the next couple of years as things are stored or done inside the blockchain, not needing that middleman anymore. So cutting things out, right? Anyway, they listed, I think, the top 10 things that people sort of strive to do today And we're saying these are going to become obsolete in the next 6 to 7 years. Very scary.
So scary. And this is the whole conversation about, innovation and also disruption. I was thinking of Blockbuster. As you're talking, I'm thinking, here's, Blockbuster was the, video store. Everybody went to the video store, and they probably assumed that business model would stay intact forever.
It's not unlike cassette tapes, right?
Yeah.
And then that moved to CDs for us in our generation.
Yeah.
And we kind of went like, oh, okay, it makes sense, but you never thought the cassettes would go away. And of course now nobody even knows what CDs are. It's just, it's all gone. In my presentation that I do on a daily basis for the business that we're growing right now, the first slide in the slide deck that I talk about is disruption. Talking about disruption. Imagine being able to go back in time and position yourself in front of the launch of cell phones, the beginning of the internet, Facebook, YouTube, something that came along that was massively disruptive, and how that can change your life. Well, on the reverse side of that, some people put themselves into things that were going to be disrupted. For example, the other day I was, a little while ago, I was in Phoenix, Arizona, where our head office is. And I'm driving down the road doing a presentation on my phone, and I'm literally talking about the disruption slide. And I look out the window, and there's a closed Blockbuster sitting with the windows are all taped up,
crazy,
for rent, and a big sign or Blockbuster. And just like you said, how many times way back when did people, it's Friday, I want to get out of work a little bit early so I can swing into the Blockbuster and walk around there for a good hour looking for 2 or 3 movies to take home for the weekend. They're gone. They didn't want to change. They didn't want to adapt, and they're gone.
But that's I remember reading the book, The Innovation Dilemma, or The Innovator's Dilemma. I can't remember the title of it. But he's passed now recently, but his whole thesis of his book, which is brilliant. It's the Bible for Silicon Valley. Everybody reads it, but it's all on disruption. And he says something, the reason why these big companies, they have the money, they have the resources,
they don't have the vision.
But they don't have the vision. They refuse. So for Blockbuster, for example, the reason why, it's not that they didn't know about Netflix, but they were making so much money on late fees. I'm not sure side to think about that. So to some extent, the shareholders probably they were very short-sighted, in that they're like, no, we want to keep charging late fees.
Unbelievable. And
you are right in the sense of, so here's the question I ask you, because I know we're talking about organizational, but on a human level, why is it that people who are maybe right in front of an opportunity?
Again, I think, Joe, one of the key things that comes into play every time is, again, that false sense of security. And of course, Tony Robbins, who I got goosebumps just saying his name, I admire and think he is just absolutely brilliant. And a lot of people would say, oh, Tony Robbins, he's the motivational guy. If that's what you think of Tony Robbins, you know nothing about him, right? And one of the things that he teaches is that I think there's 6 essential needs of human beings. And the very first one is the need for consistency, or security, that, like, the need for that. And of course the second need is for not to have that. I forgot the word he uses, but it's not coming to me, but so to have that sense of security, that sense of consistency. And of course the second need is the sense of not having that, so the sense of excitement or change. But I think the big thing that a lot of people hang on to is a false sense of security, knowing or believing, not knowing, right? Because it's not the truth, but believing that my job is secure, I have enough to pay the bills and to do this, take 1 trip a year, can't put the kids in private school or whatever, all those extra things, but it's enough. And a lot of people just stop striving for more than enough. And I don't think we were made to settle. We weren't made to have enough. We were created for abundance in relationships, abundance in love, abundance in life, abundance in joy. So, go for it. But you really find only a handful of people in any given group that are ready, willing, and able to do that. Most people are just like, no, don't disrupt me. And
it's scary, because part of it, I was talking to a client recently, he's writing a book, and he was talking about the brain being just a machine. And it's like the programming that the conditioning
Yeah.
that you're supposed to get a 9 to 5, that you're supposed to work until you're 75.
Such poison we've
you're
been
supposed
fed,
to go
right?
to school.
Yeah.
You're all these supposed tos.
You know, if you and I might be going off sideways
No,
here, but
go,
right, if you
please.
think about when, do you know when The Weeknd was created?
No,
Do you know
please.
who created The Weeknd?
Well, he's a great R&B singer from Toronto. he's from Ethiopia.
He's from,
Really,
yes. No, Eritrea, I think, really good. Henry Ford.
Wow.
You know, the back then everybody worked 7 days a week. You just did what you did, and of course it was, you know, an agrarian lifestyle way back when and stuff. And they created factories and all this stuff, and then he decided to tell people, educate them, like we'll have a weekend where you can work 5 days a week and then enjoy your family. And it attracted people to the factory to go, oh, I want one of these jobs. You know, I don't want to farm anymore. I want one of those job things that they're talking about. So it wasn't that long ago. And yet here we are today thinking that's the only way it is. It cannot be another way. And it's such limited thinking.
It's insane.
There's a wonderful book, John Maxwell, The Law of the Lid.
Yeah.
Oh, go down the rabbit hole with that one.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
like people create a lid for themselves. There's a ceiling on their life, whether it's relational, job, income, and they put that in place subconsciously, and it just remains there. And for most people, it remains there their entire lives.
It's insane. And yeah, we often blame external problems for why
That's
we're not getting
the easiest
you know,
way to talk
my
about no
employer
results.
didn't give me the raise.
Yeah.
So we find it is interesting though in that sense, because I think what you were saying earlier, in the sense that there's two sides to us. There's the side of us that wants comfort, that wants security, and we want, to some extent, we want life to be predictable.
Yeah.
And then there
Yeah.
is the other side of
That
us.
doesn't want the prediction. You want the excitement, the unknown.
Well, no, this says variety.
Variety.
Yes.
Which is true.
That's the what is the first?
The first one is comfort and variety.
Comfort and variety.
Comfort and then variety.
Yes. Yeah.
And those two things sometimes don't go together.
Mm-hmm.
Comfort and variety. How can you be?
No, they're kind of opposite ends of the stick, right?
Yeah.
And yet the human being needs to know a little bit of both
Yeah.
to actually be comfortable. But I think also in today's conditioning, people find themselves, you know, in the place of wanting comfort, not that they have it,
No.
wanting it, thinking they have some form of it, and so focused on that's like, well, forget the variety. Let's just push that out of here. Like that doesn't belong anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an innate thing that human beings need.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And I think understanding how we function and operate is essential, because often I think I see this, people are sleepwalking. They're unaware of this, you know, it's like the Matrix, that they're in it,
Yeah.
but they have no clue. And even the very people that are yelling at you, telling you to get a secure job, so forth, so on, they don't understand that they're trapped.
No, and I think, I forget who it was. I think George Zalicki, who was a person in a company I was with for many, many years, a company called ACN, fantastic company. And George Zalicki was one of the top leaders and speakers in that. This guy's a world-class psychologist and like, written books and just unbelievable. And he talked about all the time how, you know, when you're going to talk about things that are going to pull you personally out of your comfort zone, he's telling them right away, hey, be prepared, because your family, your friends, your spouse, your closest people to you are going to be opposed to this. And the reason is because if you change your comfort zone, it affects theirs because you're a part of their lives.
Yeah.
You know, everything you've got going on fits into their puzzle, into their thing. And if you disrupt that, they're going to be upset.
Wow.
So they want to pull you back. No. Don't change. Sit in your seat. Stay still. Don't disrupt anything here. So they want to pull you back verbally and emotionally so that you don't move forward.
That's insane.
Yeah.
And in some ways, even in the context of COVID right now,
What?
yeah, this thing, COVID, I don't know what it's
COVID.
called.
COVID,
It's
okay.
a pandemic.
Oh.
Yes,
The-
and you're
the
in it right now.
plandemic,
Yeah.
yes,
Ooh,
yeah.
don't get me on
don't-
that. Now you're going to get me kicked out of social media.
Oh, sorry.
Don't say anything.
No.
But even in I was thinking about this recently, and I was thinking how we humans overestimate our intelligence.
Interesting.
Because we all walk around thinking we're really smart. And I think
Not that I'm brilliant, right? But even the dumb ones do.
well, that's what actually
Yeah.
they did a test. I can't remember this study, but in this study, what they did was they took a bunch of high performing students, And then they brought a group of low-performing students, and they had them take the same test. And then after the test, they surveyed them and asked the high-performing students how they did. And they said, you know what, not really that well. And then they tested the low-performing, and they all thought they aced it. And the difference, which was interesting, was that the high-performing students, because they did the work, they studied, they understood how hard it was. So when it comes to evaluating their performance, they were realistic about it. They're like, you know what, this is hard. So they're like, yeah, I don't think I did as well. But these people on low performing side, they had no clue. They didn't know what the standard was.
So they set their own bars.
So the dumber you are, the more you overestimate your.
Well, and let's be politically correct, Joe.
I can't use the word dumb. Okay,
no, the less intellectual.
Yeah. Well,
the less book smart you are.
Well, I can't. I'm not sure exactly the terms, but the point is that I think most of us, we do overestimate our abilities, and I think. When I'm looking at the whole COVID thing, one of the things that hit me recently is how easily we're programmed. Because I remember early on when the whole mask wearing thing was not a big thing at the beginning. The idea of wearing a mask for me was just but because you heard the argument for it over and over again, eventually what happens is, and this is how I think culture changes. This is the whole, you put a frog in hot water,
turn it on.
And now I'm starting to see the culture and how much it's changing to the point where now if even if you're walking around and you don't wear a mask, sometimes people will give you a dirty look or
they step away from you, like
step away.
There's you're some kind of leper.
So we've created now a completely different set of standards, which is going to take time actually, even after this.
Oh yeah, to deprogram
people. But the point that I think you're making, when it comes to the 9 to 5, anything, we're easily programmable.
Yeah, and not so easily deprogrammed.
That's the thing.
Yeah, that takes years. To program people has taken a couple of months, right? And not to get into the debate of masks or not, but it's just, okay, let's do it. No, I'm kidding.
No.
So, the amount of people that just kind of listen, right? They listen to the news. They don't do any research, anything. They don't, I think, how do I say it? Like even subconsciously, they don't care. If they're told, they'll do it. Well, it was on television. It was on the news. It has to be the truth. It reminds me now of the political arena in the U.S. Like it's unbelievable that you can have, and I won't pick a side or anything, but you can have somebody sitting in front of a camera, whether it's a debate or whatever it is, claiming something, barking it at the world, screaming it in their faces, and then they can pull up, in the background, a video of them saying the opposite of that, and then them looking, I never said that. Here's the video. I never said it. Here's the video. It doesn't matter anymore, right?
Yeah.
Truth is irrelevant now. It's completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of whoever can scream the loudest, make the most noise, then the world will buy in. Everybody's going to listen and go, that must be the truth because that's what's being said.
Yeah.
Very sad.
And it's sad because what happens then is that one of the key things in life, if you don't have a frame of reference, that I remember getting into an argument years ago when I was at Carleton University, and I think it was an ethics professor, and she was a moral relativist, and so for her morality, everything was relative, and I got into this heated debate with her, and then eventually I got so mad, and I said, well, if there's no such thing as absolute truth, why don't you go on top of the roof and jump? Got me, major problem. But the point that I was trying to make is that there are certain things, whether you like them or not, they're true.
Yeah.
They're principles that you can't.
There are so many things today in the world, and you don't even have to get into religion or anything spirituality. There are things that are true. There are things that are false. There are things that are right. There are things that are wrong. And yet the world just wants to see a big shade of gray. They want to push everything into a gray area, so that it only matters how I think today and how I feel right now. Not even how they think or believe overall. Yeah. No, today.
Yeah.
Just now, right now. Could change tomorrow. That's my preference. That's my prerogative. Like, don't push me into a corner.
Yeah, and it's scary because as a culture, then what we have is this false sense of security, which is the worst kind of security in some sense, because you think you have it, but you really don't.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's just really challenging to have important conversations. I was talking to another individual a few weeks ago, and she's her job was simply to travel all over the world, and she worked for the American government. And so when they traveled to a foreign country, her job was to teach these politicians the mannerism culturally.
And where they were.
So that they can have, and she called it, this was interesting, she goes, so that they could have a civil discourse. And I was asking to her, and she said one of the things that we're lacking in our culture today is civility. We don't know how to have a discussion. We don't know how to.
I don't even know if it's the same train of thought.
Yeah,
but that's making me think of, so many people that leave countries that they're native to,
Mm-hmm.
and come to other countries, whether it's the U.S., Canada, somewhere in Europe, whatever it is, and then fight for change in that country to make it like the place they left.
Mm.
How bizarre.
Well, the conversation, I just saw this on Joe Rogan. Individuals that are leaving California, so there's a whole slew of people, Joe Rogan included,
yes.
coming to Texas.
Yeah.
And the reason
Texas and Arizona is
this is interesting, and the reason why they're coming to Texas, obviously, because the freedom that they can enjoy, and so
Just pick it up.
pick it up.
Yeah.
No, I'm not gonna.
No, I mean, so it's not making noise. Never mind.
Someone's
Joe, this is your podcast.
It's my
bro.
podcast. And my phone is on. Darn it! But the point is that this individual who's running for the Senate or something like that, he was being interviewed by Joe Rogan. I think it's the most recent podcast he did, and he said something really fascinating. He says, "It's great that you guys from California are coming to this beautiful state, but the reason you're coming to this state is because we have A, B, and C. And now," he says, "the fear is
that they're going to come here and bring A, B, and C with them,
and you're going to make it into California again."
Yeah, 2.0.
And so the very things that are motivating you to come are those standards that we've set. And so their fear is now that that it'll change because it's more of a conservative state, more so than California. But it's true. It's interesting that sometimes we come into places where, like, for example, my family, we immigrated from Eritrea all the way to this beautiful country.
to Brockville.
To Brockville, Ontario. Ooh, who does that?
Yeah.
But the point is that you want to assimilate into the culture that you're in because that's why you're coming in.
Do you know, it's jumping into my head now. Somebody that you and I studied under, so to speak, for a long time and learned so much. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Miles Monroe.
Yeah, Miles Monroe, man. And one of the things I learned from that first thing that we all sort of dove into was the Romans. When the Romans went somewhere and conquered something, back then in history, it was like, you conquer, you pillage, you rape, you take what you want, and you go home. And the Romans were the first ones to go, no, this is not working. They conquer, they rape, they pillage, do whatever they did. And then they put a governor in place and tell them to do what? Convert this area, convert this land to Rome. And, so that's what you're talking about now. That's what's happening with people. They're trying to leave California, go to Texas or Arizona and create California 2.0. And so hopefully the state they're moving to will be strong enough to repel that, and that won't happen. And the reason they're attracted in the first place will remain, hopefully, because, California's just going down the tubes, right?
Yeah, it's bizarre.
I saw a great stat on something online the other day. The amount of moving trucks, the most moving trucks per capita across the states right now is in New York City.
Interesting.
And they showed a shot, I don't know what area, must have all these big, beautiful brownstones and stuff. And there was a moving truck, like almost every single parking, and people were just taking their stuff out and just their, mass exodus out of New York City. And of course, it's not just pandemic.
No,
right? Pandemic has been the icing on the cake to reveal a lot of how things are and who's done what, and now people are going, okay, time for change.
And I think that's what it is. I've always looked at it from that context, in the sense that I call it the big revealing, in a sense. All it's done is bring to the surface what has always been there. Even right now, what we're seeing with the level of, like, addictions and the level of abuse that probably was underreported. There's a whole lot of things in culture that we kind of put under the surface and kind
swept
of
under the rug.
Yeah, and now we have to address as a society, which is kind of exciting. And this is a great segue. I know this is a strange way to segue, but it is in some sense, because with the pandemic, there has been an acceleration of change economically. And the markets have changed significantly. Everything has changed. Everything.
And when did you ever think, and not to pull you off that, right? But when did you ever think that we would see this in our lifetime? And I'm talking in our city, in our province, in our country. Never mind that, in the world, the entire world has shifted to do this. So again, statistics you begin to see, right? One thing I read was that 60% of all businesses, certainly small business, that have closed due to the pandemic will not reopen.
Wow.
When it's over. So, I mean, that is staggering. What are they going to do? How are they going to make their money? How are they going to pay their bills? So the impact or the ripple effect of that, I think right now can't be measured. And we're going to not see the end of it until years have gone by.
It's crazy. Yeah, in the midst of such devastation, there's always opportunity.
There's a lot of people may not know who this is. Jim Rohn, not Jim Rohn from the sportscasting thing. Jim Rohn, the older gentleman who's now passed away, network marketing guru, network marketing trainer. Jim Rohn, fantastic human being, wonderful guy, and some of the best training out there. And one of the things that he always said was, and I'm still daily trying to listen to this, not listen to it on my phone, but listen to it in my head, is that he would always say, after spring comes summer.
I don't know. Summer.
And then after summer comes
fall.
And after fall comes winter. And to not think so would be foolish, right? So it's, again, even though it's such a pandemic, such a world-changing thing, winter will come and spring will come and summer will come. And so those things will come back around. Things will, I'm not going to say return to normal, but we have disruptive things that show up, change things. And so for us, your segue, your transition is to go what I'm doing for business now. And, so it's in the arena of cryptocurrency, which has been around now since 2009, right? We're 11 plus years into this. It's an industry that's not going anywhere, even though some people still say, no, that's, you've got some of the most famous, wealthy people on the planet that would all be like, no, you don't go near that, don't do this. And of course, that same group of people have massive holdings inside the arena of cryptocurrency.
Interesting.
And so, it's been around a long, long time. It isn't going anywhere. And so as we saw light of, what's going on, me and a few others, Jeremy, some small group of people got together and thought, mining of cryptocurrency is a very advantageous thing if the right things are in place. So if we go back 10, 11 years ago and you had a little mining rig, which is just a little supercomputer that, sits on a shelf running 24/7, authenticating transactions in the blockchain and doing, its little job and being rewarded with, let's just talk Bitcoin for a minute, being rewarded with new Bitcoins that are being given birth to through a mining rig. Now, if this was 11 years ago and you had a machine that was doing that, energy was a certain price and the machine cost a certain thing and all these factors came into play, but the amount of Bitcoin you were gaining at the time for doing that job made it well worth it. But here we are in 2020. Electricity prices are through the roof, cost of equipment's through the roof, so home-based mining for cryptocurrency is now pretty much obsolete. Unless somebody's donating the equipment to you and you get free energy. It's almost crazy to even think about doing it. At best you'd be trading 4 quarters for $1. Most likely you're losing money and you might have to unplug those things and then wait for rates to change and everything before you can plug them back in. And that, of course, being said, you also have to know what to do with the thing when you plug it in. How do you program it? How do you direct it to a wallet? All that stuff. So we saw a need, and of course, not to sidetrack again, but there are many things you can do in crypto. You can buy, hold, speculate, trade. There's just an array of things you can do inside the world of crypto. And I think we kind of came to the conclusion that mining was the safest, or certainly the most, or the easiest maybe. You own a piece of equipment. If you have all the right factors in place, plug it in, let it run 24/7. It's like a little miniature digital franchise. It's doing its thing and it's printing currency, 24/7. So we thought we had to put a facility in place. So we have 2 buildings, one in Washington and one in Phoenix. The Washington mining farm, as we refer to it, has hydropower that comes to it at 5 cents a kilowatt with no delivery cost. Of course, if you know what's the power cost of energy, here in States or Canada, sorry, what, an average of 18 cents?
Yeah,
that's
maybe,
crazy, right? Plus delivery on your bill and all that stuff. And down there at Washington, we have 5 cents a kilowatt with no delivery cost.
Wow.
Well, that keeps you in the game. 2 most expensive things in mining are electricity and, second, electricity. It takes power to run the machine, power to cool the machine.
Okay.
And then, of course, the third is cost of getting the equipment and putting the infrastructure in place. So we've eliminated those costs. So we have a building there with that. We have a building in Tempe, Arizona, which is a suburb of Phoenix. And that building is completely mining with solar power. So we put a massive solar system on the roof that pulls it in, and all the mining that's done in that building, all done through the power of the sun. So, ultimately, so some people might pay $100, $120 a month for energy for the mining rig that they're trying to run. The mining that we're doing there is costing between $20 and $50 a month because it's solar.
Mm-hmm.
So, we've eliminated those costs. And then, of course, inside that, we opened up an opportunity. Really what it is to allow the average person to mine at a big corporate level. So, the building's been put in place, the electricians, electricity, the solar, the racking, the rigs, everything's been put in place for you to just come along and participate at a big boy level, whether you buy 1 machine or 100 machines. And we do have people that buy in excess of 100 machines.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, of course, a lot of people that buy 1, 2, or 3 machines. But they all get the same power rates, the same technology, the same tech support, the same everything. So it allows people an alternative of doing something out there in the financial.
So I know most people listening to this, most of what you just said
Was
literally over their heads.
over their heads.
And I know the
We
first
both
time.
know Sarah.
Yeah.
Sarah's been,
Yeah.
I think, done some things
Yeah,
with you. And
yeah.
one of the things that Sarah, the first few times I spoke to her, she kept looking at me going, like she was literally doing that. She's going, I have no idea what you're talking about. Or a wonderful friend, Carol Storms in Toronto, back in January, Lupita and I flew down to Florida to spend a couple of days at her house with her and her husband Peter and talk about all this stuff. And literally it was, day in, day out, long talks every day, 5, 6, 8, 9 hours a day, talking about all this stuff. And she wasn't doing that, but it was like deer in the headlights, like, oh my gosh. And yet here today, just 7, 8 months later, she's almost like, if you spoke to her, you'd be like, oh, this lady's a pro in this arena, right? It's a big arena. It's a big thing. It's new. A lot of people don't understand it. But if you dive in, if you'll go down that rabbit hole just a little bit, the things you learn will put a smile on your face. They'll excite you, and you just want to know more. There's more.
So why don't you go and explain a little bit blockchain technology? Because I think for just at a,
that's, you know what? I don't even, Joe, I don't know. I can say a little bit of something, but I don't even know if it's a really good explanation.
Okay.
I know I get it.
Yeah.
So blockchain is a secure technology. Oh gosh, I don't even know where to go, right? It's like, it's this thing that generates a block, literally, and it's put in line. And then the transactions or the things that are going on inside that block, whether they're transactions on the blockchain for Bitcoin or whether it's somebody storing a contract, a smart contract for a purchase of something, whether that's real estate or a product, whatever it is, inside there. And then all the other machines that are running, the mining rigs that are running anywhere in the world on that blockchain are going to authenticate that transaction. They're going to say, yes, that's valid. And when enough of them have said that, that block is closed, it's done, and it moves on, and a new block with new information is put in place. And it's so secure. This is kind of out there, but you can watch, probably in the next couple of years, voting will likely be done in the blockchain.
Wow.
If you have a non-corrupt system in place and they want it to be fair, they want it to be real, it will likely get pushed into the blockchain because it's so secure. Nobody can hack it, nobody can cheat it. If you wanted to, you'd have to log in, hack every computer that's on the blockchain around the world at the same time and try to get them all to accept the new information that you're trying to push out.
Impossible.
Yeah, it's impossible. So, who knows what the future holds, but impossible right now. And so that's simply put what the blockchain is. We always tell people, for example, the blockchain for Bitcoin has over 2 billion transactions a day taking place. A good example would be this, banks. So you go on a trip, you go out somewhere, you pull out your credit card, debit card, and you make a purchase, whether it's for a meal or whatever it is you're doing. subconsciously, people all know this, but they just don't think about it. Subconsciously, that transaction you just made had to be authenticated by the bank almost instantaneously, right? So they made that purchase. How often have you heard of, and maybe it's even yourself, you've had this experience where I went away. I was in Puerto Rico, before the pandemic had happened, and I went into one of the stores, made a purchase or tried to make a purchase, and it wouldn't go through. It was declined, and I had to call the bank. Well, it was declined that quick, instantly. So banks have massive data warehouses of computers running 24/7, doing one job: authenticating transactions. Yes, that was Joe Mabratu's card, that was Joe Mabratu's PIN number, and that was normal behavior for Joe Mabratu. Allow it to go through. Or that's a little odd. Let's shut Joe's card off. That quick, right? So that's what's taking place now in the blockchain. Normal people can do the authentication of those transactions in the blockchain with a little mining rig. So that's how people can participate. Now you're getting paid for what? The job that the banks have been doing for years, authenticating transactions. It's pretty neat when you start to understand it.
And that's where I'm really intrigued, in the sense that, we use fiat currency, and that...
Well, and we use fiat currency. Well, again, most people don't understand that term,
Yeah.
fiat currency. What's that? Paper money, right?
Yeah.
Dollars, pounds, euros, yens, pesos. We use those, but I think it's about 80 or 86% of fiat currency or paper money doesn't even really exist. It's just zeros and ones on a computer at your banking institution or your brokers or whatever it is. It doesn't exist, but people still think about, no, there's just loads of paper money somewhere that does all this. It's being replaced. They just haven't had their eyes open enough yet to go, oh, crypto could be one of those ways or one of those answers and stuff, but they will have their eyes open at some point when all of the governments or all of the banks are going, everything's digital now. It's a different word. Crypto digital, right? Canadian and US announced at the very beginning of the pandemic, talking about their own digital dollar. It's cryptocurrency, just another name.
Just another term.
Yeah.
It's interesting. And that, to me, we started with the whole disruption, and the fact that I think as people, we're not really good at, I think, understanding change. Because right now, the world's changing right in front of our eyes, and to some extent, either it's almost like it's a surreal experience in that we don't really engage it. We're still living as if the world is still pre-pandemic to some people, even to some extent. Because I think that's part of our survival mechanism.
I think it is, yeah.
And so you're in this world, you live in it day in, day out. You're educating, training people on this stuff. What's the process for a person to go from that mindset where they just look at the world through?
Oh, gosh. The real process, if we break it down to real, I can't say real scientist, I'm no scientist or whatever, but the real thing is to somehow allow things to become somebody else's idea. So it's not to push things down somebody's throat. If you start explaining something to somebody, whether it's your religion of choice or a cryptocurrency thing or an alternative health thing, another road we could go down. If you start talking about some of that and the person you're chatting with is opposed to it, change the topic. Talk about sports. Go somewhere else, because if it's not their idea, they don't want to know about it. And so what that means is ultimately all you have to do is find a way to make it their idea. So if you could become a master of asking questions, learn to ask all the good questions. Tony Robbins again says, what is he? Tony Robbins calls himself the why guy. Just ask the right questions and then learn to ask bigger, better questions. I'm reading right now the 15 Irrefutable Laws of Something with John Maxwell book, and it's talking the first 2 chapters all about those questions, asking those questions. So if you know enough or learn enough to ask questions, the right questions to the right person, what they're going to do is turn around and ask more about it. And so what happens then is just a little psychological shift that goes, it's my idea. I thought of the question. I gave it to you. I want the answer. Tell me. And that's a big shift.
Yeah, it's a massive shift.
Yeah.
And that is really what influence looks like in many respects.
100%.
Yeah, it's kids. I mean, with my kids, often that's part of it, is that if it's their idea, then they're going to like the food. They're going to like so part of it is, and I think, I love that concept of not trying. I always say to people, if I'm trying to persuade you into something, so let's say I'm on a sales call and I persuade you to buy whatever, then I also have to continue to persuade you to keep using said product.
Yes.
And so it is important that whatever decision a person makes has to be their idea.
Yeah, we had ACN, which was a company we both have some experience with. Fantastic training. They're one of the best in the industry for events and training. Just they're second to none with that. And one of the things that just in the average little local training, they would always say every Saturday, right, is, don't try to convince anybody to do anything. If you convince them to join this opportunity, then you got to convince them to show up on Saturday at the event, and you got to convince them to stay for the training, and then you got to convince them to find some customers, and then when they have the big international training, you got to convince them to go. You just changed your job to, you're now a babysitter.
Yeah.
So if you learn to shift that, right, and somehow ask the right questions, pose the right information. Maybe they won't ask the question today. Maybe they'll bump into you again 6 months later or a year later and say, how's that thing going? Guess what they just did? They just asked you a question. And now they actually want to know. No, typically they want to know because they want to go, told you so, right? But if it has paid off for you, it's worked out for you, whether that's your alternative health thing or your business opportunity, whatever it is, if it is going well for you and you now have that answer, you're going to get a completely different response. Only because they asked the question.
That's really powerful.
I think, again, not to change topics, but going back to the political state in the U.S., nobody's asking questions. No, they're just listening to the media. They just listen, and then they spew out all the stuff that they've been told. Nobody's asking questions, and they're afraid to.
Yeah, and it's scary because when you start to ask questions, you may not necessarily get the answer you want. And that's part of, I think, even in the way we consume social media, we tend to, social media is helping us do that. But at the same time, we also purposely choose to listen or to read content that
solidifies your own thought process,
belief system. So to get out of your own little enclave, your own world and belief system, and to talk to people who think differently from you, it's scary because again, it's to some extent your security, what you know to be true, or
what you hope to be true,
whatever, even if it's false, it's got a jarring effect to it. It could cause a crisis. So you know what? Most of us, we're averse to change. So we'd rather just believe what we want to believe.
And there's a tough road to go down there. I think about, I don't know if you've seen it yet, Social Dilemma.
Yes, I did.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, incredible.
Oh, there's another podcast. Yeah. Unbelievable. So, Lupita told me about it, and she's like, "Babe, you got to watch this." Oh, okay. She'd watched the night before, and then I jumped in, watched the whole thing. Oh my gosh. It's scary what's going on, right? And one of the things, there's two sides to it. So over the years, with my own Facebook account, for example, I see people talking about things that I don't like or I don't believe or I whatever, and I unfriend because the list is full of whatever. So I unfriend them and add somebody new, and in one way I think, I'm controlling my own environment, which is a very important thing. Yeah, you want to control your environment, and on the other hand, it's like, okay, but am I allowing myself to be challenged enough? And so I'm now selective at controlling my own environment. I still want to, if somebody's really radical, really brass, really out there or something, I was like, I don't need that. But if somebody's challenging, okay, that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think challenge is important. That's how we grow. I'm learning this about myself in that sometimes I think I'm right about a certain, it could be politics, could be in any area. But then just talking to somebody who sees something completely differently challenges, first of all, whether or not what I believe to be is actually true, because it's got to be tested. It's valid, it's got to withstand some level of rigor.
Where's the litmus test for that? Yeah.
And in addition to that also, even if this person does not convince me that their ideas to be true, what it does is it gives me empathy. It gives me a sense of where they're coming from and why they believe what they believe.
Well, it's, in fact, we've known each other now.
Too long.
Over 20 years.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So we met when we were 4. So a long time. And that's one thing I've always appreciated about you is even watching you. And you've done it with me as well, right? Challenged me. And not as a sense of challenge, just as a sense of intellectual conversation. Yeah. But I've watched you do that with many, many people over the years. And never with a sense of, I proved them wrong or whatever. No, it was just like an intellectual exercise for yourself and for the person that wanted to engage.
Yeah. And I think you have that sense of curiosity, and that's something that I'm always impressed by you, is your ability to retain information in so many diverse areas. It's incredible. You're like,
some of them are useful.
Yeah, some of them are very useful. Some of them are not. Just early on, we're talking UFC, and you're like, and I'm amazed. You have this appetite. You, in some ways, of you're a learner, right? And I think you've been a lifelong learner. And one of the areas that you've had tons and tons of education and training in is actually health, alternative health. And how did you get into that world?
Ooh,
I know, because this is why you're here.
Is that a rabbit hole there?
This is a little rabbit hole, but you don't have to stay there too long. Just
I'll go downstairs.
Yeah.
So how we got into it ultimately was, we had a guy living in our basement many years ago. Let me try and think. Close to 20 years ago. So you would have known him. So it was around when we met. It was not Joe.
My alter ego, yes.
Yeah. Was it Joe? It was not Joe. It was a guy named Ron, originally from Newfoundland, who was kind of down.
Oh, I remember Ron, the bodybuilder.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. He was an ex-Canadian champion bodybuilder, a third Dan in Taekwondo, and wonderful, wonderful guy, and just a little lost in life and stuff. And at that time, we had a beautiful home with a finished basement, and we thought we'd give him a place to stay and get back on his feet. So he moved into the basement, and just one day he just walked up. He'd been in the world of like steroids and all that, and it really messed up his own body. And knew it now. And now his favorite topic, which is now one of my favorite words, was longevity. Mm. So he was shifting from the world of that to the world of alternative health in a sense. And he was all about longevity. He just wanted to learn anything about longevity. And he came up one day and he handed us a book as a gift. He said, I want you guys to have this book. And it was The pH Miracle by Dr. Robert Young. Mm-hmm. And the premise of that book is that the body's alkaline by its design and acidic by function. Blah, blah, blah. And, if there's sickness or disease, then just change the environment. Mm-hmm. Change that interstitial fluids, change the internal environment, and things cannot coexist. So that was the premise of the book. We read it, made sense to us. We thought at the time, we're kind of healthy and stuff, like, whatever, and put the book down. And a few years later, I forget how many years now, but then my late wife was then diagnosed with cancer. And when we were driving back from the hospital to the house, we weren't kind of talking, we were just in shock, and she just kind of whispered out, like, where's that book? And I knew which book she meant. And we got home, went down to the basement, dug through some boxes, found it, brought it upstairs. She reread it again overnight. And we dove in. We just went all in. And that journey then took us to the place where, I've met unbelievable people and become friends with. I'll even be bold to state, that we are friends. It's not just somebody I know. Dr. Darrell Wolf, the doc of detox. What a guy, what a radical human being. And learn from him like crazy, right? Paul Batterio, the owner of Synergy Science and Echo Water, Ty and Charlene Bollinger, the Truth About Cancer documentary series, or Robert Scott Bell from the Robert Scott Bell radio show. People like that who I've become great friends with and just continue to learn from on a daily basis. And so, what I do with the arena of crypto and with my blockchain life, I enjoy every day. But my passion is alternative health. I just absolutely love that.
And talk a little bit about the concept of changing the environment, because especially even within the context of COVID right now, most people are focused on the cure. But
and this is something, camera guys laughing at my face.
This is the point of
James. Are you laughing at me?
Yeah.
He's kind of like he's going. Oh, what do I say now?
The point is, I think
this is going to be. You know what? You're asking a big controversial question, and it comes down to belief. And of course, there's so much garbage now in social media. I saw such a great post the other day. It was a picture of Ferris Bueller sitting on the phone with his feet up on the desk. It was a scene from the movie, right? Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And it said something about, like, imagine the phone company wanting to disconnect your calls because they don't like what you're talking about on the phone.
Oh, wow.
That's what's happening in social media, right?
Yeah.
All these Facebook, Instagram, everybody now is, you can't say they don't have an agenda. Mm-hmm. They have to.
Yeah.
why do you let somebody say that and they don't say, apart from something radically disgusting in the sexual world or having to do with killing people or I don't know, whatever, but when people have their health or political views or stuff, there's a certain side of that that's being shut down like crazy. And so a lot of the things that I would say right now, would maybe get things pulled off the internet. It's that sad. But again, you just go back to the people hear what's on the news. There was a stat the other day. I'd have to look at my phone to pull it up again. But what's the health organization thing?
The WHO?
No, the other one.
CDC. CDC. Yeah.
So CDC had this stats on how many people were getting sick. So exposed to corona and then getting corona and whatever. And so the amount of people that were wearing masks was far exceeding the amount of people that weren't wearing masks getting COVID. Why? Nobody asks why. In fact, they listened to the CDC and who tell them to do this months ago. They just continue to do it. They don't question it again, right? We're coming full circle to people who don't want to ask the questions because they're afraid what the answers might be. And so when you find out that the people that have been advising you to do certain things, they were wrong. What do you do now?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, the cure, I can't say that. That's a horrible thing to say. But your immune system is...
Well, that's what I wanted you to address.
Yeah, it's your immune system, Life and death begin and end in the gut. And if you have a healthy gut, you have life. And there's so much to learn, so much to dig into in that. But just simply put, if you have a healthy gut, you have a healthy life. And your immune system's everything. Kids don't need another vaccine. Kids don't need another mask to wear, whatever. They need to go play in the dirt. They need to play outside. They need to strengthen their immune system. Stop rubbing all that alcohol crap on your skin. Stop spraying those things. And oh my gosh. I went into a friend's home in Kingston. It was the guy who introduced me to Lupita, my fiance. Wonderful Lupita. So
yes.
I went down to visit her, and I was at my friend's place waiting for her to show up. And I could smell these smells all over the house. And he had these little, those things that are plugged into the wall with this, what he thought was these Glade fresheners. I wasn't going to use the name, James. So they were plugged in every room. In the hallway, every room had one of these things in it. And people just think, oh, it makes things smell nice. No, you're pumping chemicals into the air. So I went through the house and pulled them all out and threw them in the garbage. And, he came home from his job at the end of the day. And so he's like, I think he actually walked in and couldn't smell them. And then at some point in time, he opened the garbage and was like, what's going on? Like he was kind of a little bit upset. And I started explaining to him. He's like, okay, never mind. You're just, and so many people do that stuff, right? Again, without names being used, James. Yeah. There's commercials on TV where they show you, spray this in the room. It eliminates odors. No, it doesn't. It masks them with something else. And now you're breathing that. So in all of those things you do, the deodorant you may use, the toothpaste you may use, the makeup, the hair dye, all of those things are attacking the immune system. They're weakening the immune system. And of course, we just do more and more things. And now, unfortunately, everybody's wearing a mask. Breathing in your own CO2 and doing whatever and blocking things. You're not allowing yourself to become stronger. You're allowing yourself to become weaker.
And the thing is, and this is where I think as a culture we need to get better at having real conversations about things that actually matter
instead of real fights.
And so often I think what happens is when you make a statement like that, and I see this often, is that individuals are threatened, their personhood, because
and some of the decisions they made. So you're threatening to make me wrong.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's like when we hear experts, government, authority, whoever that person is, they speak things to be absolutes often. But I think with something like this, especially with a virus, they themselves, most of the scientists will tell you that they don't fully understand it.
Yeah.
They're just in the midst of trying to understand. And I think often what happens is, and I see this, and I've said this early on, I wrote a post about this and somebody wasn't happy with me, but the post was really simple. I was just saying, look, most often the solution to a problem is always worse. So because we're operating from a place of fear, we don't have enough information. And so we overcorrect often. And so then years later, we see these documentaries, and we see this in every area. You know,
yeah, the government. You know, there was way back when, maybe the 40s or something, where they were spraying children coming into schools with DDT. Literally holding them like by their hands, like, and then pumping a thing and like covering them with DDT. The world trusted the government with thalidomide, you know, and now people are suing their own governments and medical systems because they had a thalidomide baby. Now, this is going back a couple of years, but there have been so many things, and yet the people at large still don't want to question the government. They still don't want to ask those tough questions.
Yeah, and that's and I get it, and I get why, because again, and I keep repeating this, is that I think all of us are designed for security, and we do trust. We want to, not necessarily we trust, but we do want to trust that somebody is in control. But I think when it comes to, especially what this pandemic for me has revealed, is there's a huge leadership vacuum.
Oh, well put.
We've too many people playing politics. We don't have enough people actually looking for the data. I just saw recently, I think a bunch of professors from Harvard and I think Oxford, they've come out and they've put a paper out there saying, hey, here's a different way of addressing this, because we see Sweden and different places addressing it. And
thousands of doctors now coming out trying to have their voice, but being, you know, condemned and shut off by certainly social media and stuff, being turned off by that, right?
Yeah, and I think that's sad, because for me, the scariest part of this whole thing, and this is how I think, and most people will think like, well, maybe you should, but I'm always not necessarily thinking about what everybody sees. I'm always looking at what's behind the thing. Mm-hmm. That's just my nature, and that's just my tendency. But I also want to look at the byproduct of a decision making, because those are the things that no one wants to talk about because it's too late. For example, right now, the byproduct of something like this, where people are locked down and all that stuff, we start to see the rise of mental health, and there's whole other issues that we as a society. So part of the challenge here is we've become, and in life also, this is, I think, a problem, is that when you become too what's the term? Narrow-minded, tunnel vision. You focus only on one thing, but life is an integrated thing.
Oh, it's so many faceted and so many moving parts, right? And we sort of categorically choose, let me look this way for a little while, and when something bumps me over there, I'll turn my focus. You know, when you talked about a void earlier, or the vacuum, when the void is created for something or with something, it never remains empty. Mm-hmm. It can't.
No.
It has to pull something else into it. Mm. So if there's a void of good leadership, like if the good leadership is falling away, that void is, as a vacuum, pulling something else into it. And what we're witnessing right now is it's not good what it's pulling in. It's pulling in a bunch of whiny babies that think they deserve to be paid for telling people how to live their lives when they don't even know how to live their own. Mm-hmm. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's really challenging. One of the people that I look to in these moments is people like Jordan Peterson, who
love him.
Says things that are, I don't know why they're controversial, because they're not.
There's a topic on its own, right? Why are they controversial? Because they're not. Well, it's because people don't want it to be true. People want their opinions to be true. It's just your opinion. Your opinion doesn't change fact.
No.
And that, you know, Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, they're about facts. I often, when I hear them, a little video or something from either one of those, and many others as well, Joe Rogan, you hear them talk about certain things, and one of my thoughts is, how does somebody debate that? Well, the only way to debate it is with my own opinion. I just want to be mad about my own opinion. I don't care what you think. I don't care about the facts.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think I understand that all of us have biases. I'm biased. I have my bent because my upbringing, my philosophy on life, what I believe in, everything that my past experience.
You're looking through all the filters that you've been handed all your life.
All of us have biases.
Yeah.
I think it was, what's his name there? Matt Blakely, who's on the podcast a few weeks back. And he said, what he's looking for is minimal bias.
I like that. That's good.
And I love that. And so the point is that, and this is where in an age of misinformation, it's really hard to know what's true and what's propaganda and what's,
and then inside that, isn't it all propaganda?
Well, that's at the end of the day. So it's really hard from a decision making. Even the people that we used to trust, like for example, in authority was a big thing. Legacy Media, for example, was somebody to be trusted. The New York Times or the Ottawa Citizen, whatever these papers. But everybody has some kind of bent, and they're all trying to push an agenda of some sort. And so it's really hard for us as citizens to have civil discourse because none of us actually have all the information.
Yeah.
And so what I'm trying to do on a day-to-day basis is I recognize, like even with my own community, we have these amazing neighbors that we love. And the mother and the son, they're immune compromised. And so he has asthma, and she has a host of things. I'm going to have her on the podcast because she's one of the most incredible human beings I've ever met. But what they've been trying to do is really have a sensible approach. And they want to be very protective because they understand that if their son gets COVID or she does, it's going to be devastating.
Yeah.
And so us, even as neighbors, as friends, we're also aware of it. But they haven't, and this is what I love about them, is that they haven't come inferred on us, and like they didn't come and say, okay, well, everybody in the neighborhood should bow down. So no, they've worked with us because they understand and they value the relationship. And so what it does for us, interesting enough, is we go even beyond the call of duty to protect them because we care and love them.
But that's, so I think, for lack of a better term, what they did by approaching it that way was made it your idea.
That is true.
So we came full circle.
It's
again,
so
right?
true.
So they made it full circle, or we made it full circle, and they made it about your idea. And so when it was your idea, it was like, what can we do to help?
We take ownership.
Take ownership.
And I think governments, and this is why I'm not big into legislating anything. And I always just say this in with the Christian evangelical church. Often the idea was, if you couldn't win the cultural conversation, then all you do is you try to find, some kind of judge, whatever that, so that they can go and legislate whatever belief system you have.
Yeah.
But the problem is that, yes, you can win the political game and you can legislate morality, but in the end, you don't have the hearts of people.
That makes me think of the world lost something or somebody unbelievably valuable and important not too long ago, a few months back. Somebody that you and I think you were in a couple of those inner circles to be able to have dinner with this guy, Ravi Zacharias.
Oh yeah, incredible.
What a mind, what a heart, and of course that was his whole perspective, right? I remember him sitting at dinner one time. Larry Brune, Jim Bone, a couple of guys were all there, and Lyle Johnson, and Ravi said there was an old Indian proverb: "Don't cut off a man's nose before you give him a rose."
Wow.
And I thought about it from my little intellectual mind going, oh, yeah, interesting, right?
That's deep.
Yeah, it is deep. It's, and of course he's talking about it in the sense of, witnessing to somebody about God, about Christ. And, but you take that and apply it to anything, right? If you're going to talk to them about blockchain, cryptocurrency, mining and stuff, and you sort of beat them over the head with, you're crazy because you don't even know what you're talking about, and here's what you should know. You just cut their nose off and then hand them a rose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was it's Robert, I can't remember his name, but it's a book on influence. And he has the 7 laws of influence. And one of them is the law of reciprocity.
Yeah.
And this, interesting enough, he uses the illustration he uses is brilliant. It's the Hare Krishnas years ago. I don't know if they still do that, but they used to congregate in airports. And what they would do is as soon as they'd be walking around the airport and they would offer you a rose for free. And of course you get a flower for free and you're like, wow, that's nice. But what happens then is that law of reciprocity. They know that the sense of like you received something.
Yes.
So you naturally then want to give. And so this was a fundraising, which I don't think is a great way of doing it, but obviously it worked for them.
It's a slow way.
But the point is that part of the challenge of life, and I think this is one of the things I'm learning every day, is that I have enough to give. That every day, if I approach life from that vantage point.
Whether you're talking about people from church or, again, Tony Robbins or, people like that, T. Harv Eker, they all tell you to give. If you read a lot of those books, every one of them, like one of the first things you should do is give. Give of your time, give of your resources, give. Just give. It changes who you are and opens up different doors.
Yeah, incredible. And I think you've been that great example one of like, we all have geniuses, and I think your area of genius is people and relationships. You're incredible in that you can take the most hardened individual and to some extent get them to see things from your vantage point, which isn't like your ability to influence is incredible. And I've sat down in front of you, listened to you, and I'm always stunned at your ability. It's not even to convince, because often people think it's not that you're arguing with somebody. I think it's just you have this incredible communication skill and I guess the question I want to ask you is, how did you develop it? Was it just innate? Was it something that you just had?
I think, I guess if somebody like picked up a tennis racket when they were little and, they hit the ball around and stuff, and they may have had a little gifting and stuff, but then the practice of that thing makes you good. Mm-hmm. I think it's Maxwell again, John Maxwell. You tell how many books, a certain person you read, but, Tony Robbins, in fact, says, practice does not make perfect, which is an old saying, right? Practice makes perfect. It's no. The truth is that perfect practice makes perfect. Mm-hmm. Nothing's that simple that if I just do it enough, I'll be perfect at it. Yeah. But the reality is, if you do anything often enough, you'll get good at it. And the unfortunate truth to that is, if you listen to the media enough, you get good at it. If you, find a way of getting through life by just asking for things instead of working for yourself, you'll get good at it. But if you also know that if I can affect change in the lives of others, and as Jim Rohn said, or Zig Ziglar said, that if you help enough people get what they want, you can have everything you want. Mm-hmm. And so if you get good at it, practice, get good at it. So that's been me, Joe. It was innate. It was just a little built-in thing. But somehow I think I recognized the change that you'd make, or the change you'd affect with somebody. And even at a subconscious level, you saw the change, and you learn from it, and you apply it, and you do something a little more with it. And, our wonderful friend Larry, again, years ago, called me the encourager to the encouragers. Mm. And so there was a certain level of people up there doing a lot of big things and making big change. And somehow he was said, to me, he's like, but you have the ability to come in amongst this group and encourage us to make a difference for us. And, hearing that from somebody like that, again, helps you go, okay. And, another thing he said in conjunction to that was, so long ago, and I don't think I'm doing this yet, but he said, if you could learn to use your personality as a gift, the gifting you have, like the personality you have of connecting with people, if you can learn to use that as a gift, not a weapon, not a tool, as a gift, the difference you could make, the change you could affect is immeasurable. And I think I'm still learning from that on a day-to-day basis, trying to implement that more and more to learn and to grow and to affect change. And of course, I love what I do in business, and it's making a big difference for a lot of people. It's fantastic. My passion, of course, alternative health, and some of the stuff I've shared there, I've seen dramatic change made for people. And so, you see that, keep practicing, keep moving forward, keep doing things. I think too many people, right? Acres of diamonds. People quit when you're 90% of the way there, or whatever that saying is. When you're almost there, that's when people turn away. Yeah. How many times have you seen, certainly maybe in the church, where people are having relationship issues, and they're in an 8-year marriage, a 15-year marriage, and they're coming to a head, and then they give up and they go away, and all they had to do was press through and probably find themselves in a new place, a new high, a new love. They just quit when they're almost there, and people do it in all things in life, in all walks of life. They do that. They give up too soon. So
true, and I think there is that temporary relief from quitting. In that moment, you feel great.
True. Yeah.
I just saw a post this morning on Facebook, and it was really cool, because it was like, marriage is hard, and then divorce is hard.
Pick your heart. Choose your heart.
Choose your heart, essentially.
And I guess the little transition, I guess, where it moved. There's all those things in life, right? So I, had my business, went bankrupt, lost everything. My wife passed away, raised 3 kids on my own. And of course, and my kids today, they have been an absolute joy to raise, no challenge whatsoever. I'm just beyond blessed. And I spent many years grieving at different levels. And I don't know about the timing and the whole thing, how it all works and stuff, right? But things shift, things change, and I met who's now my fiance, Lupita, and we have had so many wonderful little miracles of our own, little things that we don't even pay attention to until they've passed, and go, hey, did you notice that? Little things. A funny example was, one time when we first were dating and stuff, and she'd come to my home. She was living in Kingston, I was here, and she came, and up in my room there was a picture on the wall of me out of shape, quite a few pounds overweight, and then a picture beside it where I had done the P90X, and I'd lost, 25, 30 pounds, and I was like 10% body fat, and I looked and felt the way I want to. And now, of course, I was back out of shape and stuff, and she saw the picture, and she looked at me and looked back at it and stuff, and she goes, so how long has that been up there? And I said, oh, like 3 years now? And then she looks at me, she goes, so it's not the motivating factor. It's not working for you. Take it down. It looks horrible. And of course, and I immediately just took it down and threw it in the closet. Yeah. But there was all kinds of little things that changed with her being in my life. An absolute gift from God. Joe, we could go on for another hour now and talk about the things that have happened in our lives, the two of us, and to recognize that she is a gift from God. My room looked a certain way, and it had for 11 years since Lizzie had passed away. And then there was no planning, no whatever. It was just, I need to change. I need to close the book, turn the page, do this. No. There was just a shift that took place. And the next time she came, which was like a week later, she showed up. She came to my place, came upstairs, and she walked in my room and was like, and I knew she had this internal, a little fountain of joy happen for her, because I had gutted my room, repainted the whole thing, bought new furniture, I moved forward. I closed the page or turned the page, moved on. Right? I had done something, but I had done it without even knowing. I just did it. I just shifted. And there's just been many, many things that have gone on for us like that in the now 2 years that we've been together. It's just been unbelievable.
And and the story that I love about this whole process is that when you were in ACN, she was always there, but you just never noticed her.
Yeah. Well, I did. In fact, I did. It was I'm going to say 7 years ago. That's when we first met. She was. Okay. I was speaking at an event in Kingston, the city where she was living, and I remember plain as day. I think she was in the third row back from the front and second seat in on that aisle. And I remember seeing her and thinking, wow, she's just beautiful. But I just wasn't in a place at the time to see that. And I just recognized her beauty, and and off I went. And then, of course, just over 2 years ago, we met again through a mutual friend, and it was like click.
You were ready.
Oh my gosh, I was ready and she wasn't. So I had to make her ready.
That's when
I had some convincing to do.
You had to do some work.
Yeah.
But I remember you calling me, and you had this encounter. I think it was 9 years in or something like that, where you felt a sense of healing and that you could finally let go.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things I've learned from you, and you and I both lost a very good friend to cancer too.
Peter.
I think, was it just after Lizzie or before?
Just after.
After Lizzie. And the challenge of letting go, and for you, it's because Lizzie was just this amazing human being, but she had passed, and for you to kind of let go and get out of that world so that you could finally live your life, it took a long time.
It did. Not to pick on anybody, there was one specific person in my life. Some people listening to this will know exactly who it was, but somebody said to me, they were trying to set me up on a date with somebody. This is maybe a year or a year and a bit just after Lizzie had passed. And they literally said, well, when did she pass away? Okay, well, it's been this many weeks, or no, this many months, right? So of marriage, of life with her. And so this many weeks for healing per year, and so you're ready. What? There's a mathematical equation to grieving.
Wow.
So I did. I mean, some people are pretty quick.
Yeah.
Some people are whatever. I you know what? And I can't complain about it. I can't knock it, because where I am with her, with where life is, I am beyond blessed. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And of course that, we won't today.
Yeah.
I won't even let you if you try to make me, but going down that journey,
Yeah.
right? The journey
Yeah.
of, that spiritual journey after she passed, and the things you believe, the things you think, the things you challenge, what a journey that was. That was, and you were right there for it, weekly calls and whatnot.
And that's, I think, why I have such great respect for you, is that you have this ability to confront some of the biggest challenges in life and still be able to, first of all, continue to have hope, continue to inspire people, even when you didn't feel inspired yourself.
Well, through years of growing an ACN business, right,
Yeah.
a network marketing opportunity, and growing a team of 36,000 people in 12 countries around the world, and all the people that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis had no clue that I was fighting grief and or depression. Not a clue. And yet it was a daily challenge.
Yeah, and I saw that, and that's really what I think inspired me about you, was you did have that can-do attitude, where despite how you were feeling, you still got up and you still did what you needed to do.
Yeah, some days I just got up later than usual.
Yes, some days a little later than usual, and those days also when you kind of just lost your motivation, but you didn't stay there long term. You didn't live there.
No.
And I think for most people, that becomes...
staying there isn't living.
No.
First of all, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some people often ask, I know Larry has and Lyle Johnson have asked, or sort of stated, you must have things to share with others that are going through what you went through, and now they're facing similar challenges with the loss of a spouse, or different things, or raising kids alone, or and when you're kind of asked on the spot, it's like hard to go, yeah, I have this advice, but every time you and I have conversations, it's like, oh, the wisdom of those experiences comes through.
Yeah. Because now, like at the time I met you, I was single.
Yeah.
I didn't have any kids.
Yeah. Well, at first you didn't have a wife.
I didn't have, you have to, yes. That's why I was at your house all the time.
Yes.
And nothing, I was living with my parents. But it was hard for me to understand the gravity of what you had to carry until I have my own kids.
And even now, how old are your kids now?
They're 9, 7,
so
and
right
5.
now, Joe, right now, my kids were 6, 8, and 10 when Lizzie passed away. And so right now, imagine your
you know what?
beautiful wife
disappearing
from this scenario. And not only, and again, it's another day's podcast, right?
Yeah.
But, Lizzie passed away on my birthday, my 45th birthday. And I remember thinking when she took her last breath, I had two thoughts that were instantaneous. And that was, I have to go home. The first thought was to go home and tell 3 little boys that their mom's not coming home. Not that she's sick or she's gone on a trip or she's gone. And then you have to carry that with you every day, right? So yeah, it's tough, but of course, our faith has been instrumental in that. Instrumental. I mean, I've had people over the years ask, "Didn't you get mad at God?" And I think I have a lot of thoughts, when somebody says something like that, but. One of them is, wow, you're not reading the same Bible I'm reading.
Wow.
First of all, but secondly, the answer is no. Like at no point in time did I ever have any anger towards God. And then of course some people say, well, it's okay to be angry with God. Whatever. If it is or not, it's irrelevant because I never did. At no point in time did I ever believe that was part of His plan, part of His desire. That's just part of living in a broken world. That's these things happen here. And it's been a long journey, a long haul. But again, going right back to, tomorrow's a new day. It's a new day for the kids. It's a new day for me. And I was blessed to be in the arena of network marketing, entrepreneurial, working for myself. Certainly not, living a rich lifestyle, but rich enough in this sense that I was able to wake up every day, make breakfast for 3 little boys, pack their little lunches, drive them to school, come home, do my own thing, and then go back to school and pick them up, bring them home. So for the first 2 years after she passed, I did that every single day.
I remember.
And then in fact, every third day, I would go back to the school and pick up one of them after I dropped them off and spend the day with them. And I just did that as a rotation for 2 years. And I think, and again, it wasn't a plan. I didn't think, this is going to help them be balanced, or it's just something I just did. And again, you know my kids. They're
Yeah,
just unbelievable.
beautiful.
Lupita says, day in and day out, like, I was down in Arizona working, doing stuff, whatever, and she would call me and go, "We are so blessed." I go, "What do you mean?" The kids, they're just all so amazing. Her son Ricky, like just so wonderful, kind-hearted, and just like so, and they all get along. It's like we're just beyond blessed.
Yeah. You're making me cry, which I didn't
Let me
expect.
keep going because you didn't start.
It's so, because I have children, and so it's different now. And I literally, it's one of these moments when I see my wife and I think to myself, I go,
imagine.
Just a little thing like this. It was actually a friend of ours, Sean, who his wife had gone through a really difficult sickness, and there was a moment that they didn't know she was in surgery and didn't know, and he had to take care of the 3 kids at the time. I think they had 3 kids, and I remember him calling me and crying because he didn't even know how to put her hair together. And I was just thinking about.
Now you're making me think back.
It hit me because it was my little daughter came to me and she wanted me to comb her hair and put it in a bun and all. And I wasn't doing it right. And she just said, "You know what? Forget it. I'm going to mommy." But as she went to, I just had that moment of going, I don't know if I'd be able to do that task. Because my wife makes it look so easy and so special. And I think this is where the richness of life is, that we're all pursuing things. We all want big things. We dream of big things. But it's those little moments, that's where life is.
It is. And I wish now, because we're in our home, and I wish so much that Lupita would walk down the stairs right now so I could yank her in here and say something about her. But it's come full circle for me, right? God is just so good in all that stuff. All the little things that she's done. She's not the mom. She's not but she's just, filled a massive void and filled it with joy, with passion, with talent and love, with just unbelievable. It's incredible.
Incredible. I feel it.
So even, having that loss, devastating. And then you're reflecting on, imagine having that loss, right? Well, I would give you some advice, Joe, to tell you, don't reflect on that. It's, in a sense, it's a waste of time. Yeah. Don't go there. Embrace where you are. Yeah. Love where you are. Love what you have. And enjoy that every single day. It's at some point people find themselves in a place of loss. Okay, well, now it's time to think about certain things, right? But so anyway, I guess all that being said, I've had that void filled to overflowing. Yeah. I've said to her many times, wanting somebody and wanting to be in love, it's like, you are my dream and then some. It's like, I waited, I was patient, and I've been rewarded.
So amazing.
What a gift.
Yeah. What a great way to end this podcast, to be in your home. And I've had the great pleasure, of course, of not only meeting Lupita, but eating her incredible, amazing meals.
Yes,
and
that's why I need P90X again.
Exactly. You need to get back. You're enjoying life a little too much, so you need to suffer.
As Lupita often says every time we're chatting with other people, she says, "Yeah, Glen and I have been growing together during the pandemic." Yeah.
I'm so sorry. That's a great line. But her quesadillas were incredible. And thank you for having us in this beautiful home. And I can't wait to have another conversation with you where we'll be even more controversial. So that
I hear footsteps.
Is that her?
Is it?
I think it is. Is it? Oh, there you go. There says Lupita. You gotta come.
Are you finished?
No.
We were just talking about you.
Oh, yeah?
So, see, she does exist.
Mi Lupita.
Mi Lupita.
It does exist.
Oh.
She does exist. And this is our little doggie, Elsie, who's now 18 or 19. We're not quite sure. Deaf as a doornail, but still healthy.
Wow.
So, yeah, we just finished chatting about you. And I literally said, I wish she would come down so I could pull her in and say.
There you go. And you did come.
Again, another little miracle.
The miracle. Well, what an incredible conversation, my friend. And,
thank you, Joe. Thank you, James.
My pleasure.
Awesome. Peace. Love. And we're out of here.